So now let's talk about some risks that you should be very aware of, because these risks, any one of these can actually tank a well-performing campaign that maybe has been performing for years. So they're very important to pay attention. I'd probably write these down. They're that important. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is actually specifically to e-commerce. And the reason why it's specific to e-commerce is we're talking about in-stock and out-of-stock products and how they actually interact with your multi-channel marketing. Now, each one of your networks, whether it be Google or Facebook and Instagram, Snapchat, doesn't necessarily matter. Each network is going to look for consistency. It's going to look for what is the product that's selling most often, and do I have an audience for that product, and can I spend as much money as possible on that product? Well, the byproduct of that, no pun intended, is that you're actually going to see that the majority of your traffic is actually being funneled to one or two or three products. There's a Pareto's 80-20 rule here that 80% of your profit is made from 20% of your products. And that's true in any channel. When Facebook and Instagram like something, you'll see that that ad set or that campaign is actually going to get limited by budget and then need more budget, want to grow and want to scale. Now, what ends up happening though is most channels have a 2-day rule. And what that means is that after you stop marketing for a few days, it actually resets the learning algorithm. The reason why is because those channels are actually watching those people. It is looking at trends and looking at audiences and saying, okay, who is going to be ready to see this ad? It's going to put an ad in front of them, attract them to your website. They're going to engage in your content, and they're going to leave. It happens all the time. Obviously not 100% conversion rate. So they're going to leave, and then it's going to try to remarket them. It's going to try to bring them back, and it's going to try to do so on a very specific product because that is where the widest audience is that sells most often. Now, when you stop marketing a product because it went out of stock, you lose that momentum. Remember when we talked about the ad inertia? This is what I mean by that. It means that once your ad stops, it might take a lot of ad spend and time to get that moving again at even close to the speed it was before. Because Google or Facebook or Instagram has stopped watching an audience, has stopped learning. It went dormant. And then after you turn it back on and say, hey, just do what you did before, it's like, well, give me a minute. I got to find these audiences. I got to start engaging with them again. I need to bring them back to your website and start the remarketing process and go through my whole 14-day time lag again with brand new people. So just know that some of the risks are, well, you can have a very, very well-performing campaign. But if one or two of those products go out of stock, that could actually be 50% of your activity in some cases. Now, larger companies that have a larger amount of SKUs, those are a little bit less susceptible to this because they usually have a higher ad spend and a higher amount of products that sell. But if you're just starting out or you're growing your SKU list and you have those products that are starting to perform well, it's more important to make sure that those products don't go out of stock than it is to try to scale or introduce new products. Those ad channels found something that it likes, it latched onto it, it's going to try to push it, and if it can't, you could have 80% of your campaign just go right out the window. Here's another risk. Don't necessarily try to use every ad network the same. We've talked about the difference between when Google likes something on YouTube versus when Facebook likes something as a product. Now, what we have to look at is try to build evergreen campaigns as often as possible. Those evergreen campaigns are going to leverage all of the artificial intelligence and learning and automated bidding strategies that are available to you to their maximum potential. It's nice to be able to say, okay, I might not have the best marketing prowess, but as long as I can find an audience and I can leverage those bidding strategies to help me grow and help me engage and actually help me reach these people, it's going to be much better for my business. It's going to be a lot easier. I might be a solopreneur that has 10 hats and I just can't focus on, a Google ad campaign 24/7. And that's why agencies exist, is because no solopreneur can do that. But if you can leverage those campaigns, you don't have to create new ads. You don't have to shoot new videos. You don't have to try to produce new content, weekly. Now, before you start that journey of building a new campaign, think about how long can I make this campaign effective? Is it going to be more seasonal? Is it going to be, a sprint run, a limited time sale? You can still run those. Those are good. But try to get those evergreen campaigns. Those are your concrete, your core, your foundation that you can grow into your marketing channels with. So try to build those evergreen campaigns. It's going to help you not necessarily have to work half the time on creating content and restructuring ads and building new campaigns and attracting new audiences and building new remarketing audiences and adding new steps to your funnel. Try to build it as evergreen as possible. Now, when you have an evergreen campaign, let's focus on the other half of that evergreen campaign, which is remarketing. An evergreen campaign can be driving new audiences to your site that they're going to be purchasing and have a great ROAS or a good cost per acquisition, and that is a campaign that will just continually work. But the risk, though, is that you have a ton of people that have engaged with your site that maybe you haven't remarketed to. Remarketing is actually a risk if you don't do it, because you spent money to bring a person to the site, but you didn't spend that extra dollar to bring them back and convert. And imagine in the world of paid traffic, costs are continually rising. There's inflation, there's more added users to these channels, and you're going to see that your costs sometimes, specific industries, will continually rise. So what you have to focus on is, how do I maximize my ad spend? How do I extract every dollar out of that campaign that I can in the most efficient way possible in the least amount of work that makes it the most efficient? Well, remarketing is key to maximizing that dollar. Imagine how you've interacted with a business or a company or something you purchased lately. You probably didn't just Google something and then the first thing you say is like, well, I must buy that now. You've started to look at that product and maybe some other similar products from their competitors. And then you make your decision, and then you start to Google search again, or maybe you start to see some ads on Facebook now because you're starting to look at that content more often. But the person who is in front of you most often, especially when you're at that buying point, that decision to purchase, saying, yes, I know I need a backpack. Now, there's a few different companies that I've seen that I like and some products that I think I'm going to purchase, but unless there's a company that you've been interested in that is starting to remarket to you, maybe with some incentives, you might not make your purchase decision on that company. Or possibly your competitors that are offering the same backpack as you or a similar backpack as you, they might be remarketing a lot, and they're in front of your customers that you paid for. You paid for those customers to come to your site, and maybe they purchased from you, and maybe they're Googling another product that you sell, but you're not remarketing to your existing clientele. Your competitors might earn your customer as their customer because they're remarketing and you're not. So imagine that if you can spend a lot less to bring a person back that was interested, you can actually be 6 times more effective, because that's about how much cheaper it is. It's 6 times less expensive to remarket than it is to acquire a new customer. Focus on new customers to the site, and then how can I bring the interested people that have not purchased yet back in order to get them to buy. Now, another risk is not knowing your metrics. And at scale or long term, all of those numbers that you're looking at that you're assuming are good, if they're bad, that's a huge risk. And it might find out that you've lost money and there's no way to shift what you're currently marketing before it's too late. You've already purchased a product, you've already had sitting on inventory, and you thought your return on ad spend should be 350 when actually you should have been 375. And now you're losing a bit of profit on every product that you sell. Because, or maybe you didn't necessarily know your numbers well enough to say, well, if my costs start to increase on my product that I'm producing, like my manufacturing costs go up or my shipping costs go up, now I'm going to be out of business. I can't sell this. With rising costs in ad spend and rising costs in shipping and materials, you may just completely find yourself out of business. So know your metrics and know your numbers. And as you scale, you can be very profitable. But if you're wrong at scale, you're just wrong faster. You're losing money faster. And you got to dial that back down, and you have to restructure everything that you're doing. You need to possibly rethink, okay, well, what can I actually sell this for, and what do I need to get out of these campaigns, and then focus on scale. So that's a risk. If you don't know your numbers, if you don't know your lifetime value, if you don't know how many times a person comes back to your site and purchases in the next 90 days, it's very hard to know those numbers. So please know your numbers. Let's talk about audiences. Now, cultivating an audience is easy. Inside of Facebook, it's just, identifying a specific demographic. Or maybe even a psychographic, people that are interested in this. On Google Ads, very, very similar. People that have typed this into Google, people that visit these websites, people that engage in these YouTube videos. You can find audiences easily. And as you start to sell those audiences, whether it's a product or service, doesn't matter. As you start to engage and start to convert those users, you're going to find that you can start to burn audiences. You can start to saturate them. When you see your frequency go up in Facebook, or you see your repeat rate go up in Google Ads, when you start to overshow your ads to these people, you end up starting to spend more money and actually get less results. Now that's a risk. You never want to take one thing that's working, throw a bunch of money on it, start building it up, and all of a sudden have it just start, it teeters at the top and then falls, and now you gotta restart all over again. So a risk is not necessarily cultivating audiences continuously. Look at the lookalike audiences instead of Facebook and Instagram. Look at similar audiences instead of Google. Start uploading customer lists. Start tagging specific pages on your website and say, okay, if anybody makes it to that page, like the contact us page that didn't actually contact me, grow that audience, send a different marketing message to those people. Continually cultivate audiences, continually start to make more audiences based on the learning experience that you've had of the previous audiences to continue that engagement. There's a finite amount of people in a specific region, whether it be the country, even the world. It's a finite number. You're going to find that you're going to eventually get through all of them. But what you have to do is be smart about which niches you're going to start attacking, start to scale, and then think about, okay, what can I learn and what other niches can I attack? Who else is similar to these people? Who else might be in the similar part of the customer value journey, maybe on a competitive product? Who is starting to engage in this type of product that might also be interested in a cross-sell or upsell opportunity? Many different ways to cultivate new audiences, but you have to be thinking about it because the risk is you're going to eventually burn it and you need to keep expanding. Now, smart campaigns, whether you're talking about, cost cap inside of Facebook, or you're talking about, a campaign that's using maximized conversion value, that's a smart campaign instead of Google Ads, regardless of what channel you're using, and regardless of what sort of smart bidding that you're using, it's going to try to push something for you. That could be a risk. You may say, well, I'm going to upload 10 SKUs into my store. And I have some SKUs that are at 80% profit margin and some SKUs that are, I'm kind of drop shipping those for another manufacturer and I'm only making about 10% on those. So if it sells, great, but if not, I'm not too worried about it. Google may find that the product with the least amount of margin is what it likes. It found an audience and it's going to push it. Now that's a risk because you're going to start making sales and you're going to start making revenue and your ROAS may look fantastic. However, you needed 1,000 ROAS on that product, but only 200 ROAS on a different product. Doesn't matter. The ad channel is going to find what works and it's going to push it for you because it's going to start to see conversions. Remember, everything comes back to conversions. It's the main thing that drives all digital marketing. It's like Ryan Dice said, there's only two things that really matter: traffic and conversion. And when you see those conversions take place, if it is the wrong conversion, my white paper is getting way more downloads than my contact form. Doesn't matter. It's going to start to push those because that's what sees it converting. Or, man, this one product is selling way more than the product I need it to sell. I need to sell that product, but it keeps selling this other product that I don't want to sell. Well, take it off your website, take it off your feed, or take it, remove it from your product list. You want to make sure that those risks can be understood, prepared for, and mitigated if they do happen. So know that those automated bidding strategies will run wild without your direction, and you need to be able to prepare and control that. Lastly, a risk for lead generation campaigns is lead quality. Lead quality is something you can control. You can control that actually by paying more or less for a specific placement on Google, for example. Very oftentimes we see that, the cost per click needs to be under a specific threshold. Okay, I'll go through that with a client sometimes and say, well, why do you think it needs to be there? Well, because with a lower cost per click, I can acquire more clicks, and with more clicks, I should get more leads. Yeah, for the most part, that's actually true. However, those leads are of less quality. What I mean by that is, think about your position in any sort of ad platform. If you're always the fourth competitor inside of Facebook to actually get an impression on an audience, or you're at the bottom of the page in Google, very few times have you ever done a Google search and you said, you know what, I'm gonna skip the first listing, second listing, third listing, fourth listing. I'm gonna skip all the organic. I'm gonna look at the bottom of the page. That's where I'm gonna find the person I'm gonna hire. Doesn't happen. That's why the first position in Google is so much more expensive, and that's why the repeat rate and the frequency in specific audiences start to get more expensive because you're attacking that market on your outbound campaigns at Facebook and Instagram. But your position and your exposure matters. So a risk is, don't necessarily focus on the wrong metric and try to bring that cost down because you're actually going to start to affect your lead quality. It doesn't matter what channel. So know that as a risk, just because the metrics in that platform look good, you might want to talk to a sales department and say, hey, how are the leads? Yeah, actually, no one ever calls us back, or I can't get a hold of these people, or they're actually wondering if, we're the pizza place down the street. You're going to find out that those leads that you're getting, even though there might be more of them, are lesser quality. So that's something that you need to make sure that you're focusing on. Is not just the digital aspect, but the human aspect. Are those people engaging? Are they wanting to buy products from you? Are they looking to hire you? Are they urgent and ready to go today? That is all affected by how much you're willing to spend for them.